kind of work today. He's been here maybe 3 times before, but most recently talking about what seems to be a caravan of crisis actors on a global terror tour, and it seems like not much has changed. For those unfamiliar, Ole is the author of Coup d'etat in Slow Motion, a 2-volume set, and the man behind lightonconspiracies.com, where he shines a light on things like the strange deaths of movie stars and musicians, assassinations of political figures, and of course, false flags. We've talked about many of these things with him before, and today we're going to get the latest on the events in Paris on Friday the 13th of November, and more recently in San Bernardino. We're really lucky to have a resource like Ole on THC. It is an honor and a pleasure. Welcome back, man.
Thank you so much, Greg. I get it. I almost flush when you give me this introduction here.
Yeah, that's part of the job, and you're definitely worthy of it. I mean, thanks so much for being here. You're one of the greats, and we know now that we can't trust the media, and so much of the reporting during these events, especially in the case of Paris, it seems to be so chaotic, and the details seem to have holes in them, and we see conflicting information. So I'm really glad we can have you here to set us straight. First, I did want to ask you that maybe you could clarify what's meant by a false flag, because it seems like there's been an evolution from actually attacking your own ship or building to just simulating events with smoke and mirrors and crisis actors. Do you consider both of these scenarios to be under the umbrella of false flags?
I do in one way. False flag is more, it's an old naval term saying that if you want to invade or attack someone, instead of just doing it and then become the aggressor and the one that will be criticized, what you do is you put your own flag on one, or the enemy's flag on one of your own ships, then that ship attack you, and then you become the victim, and that justifies you attacking, crushing, rape and plunder, whatever, of whoever. So this is an old template or method that has been used so many times. And I tell you, after 30 years I put in my life into this, I don't know, really, I'm at a point where I'm not sure there is such a thing as a real terrorist. Not the way we're being told that they look like, with the balaclava, the black clothes and the Kalashnikov. It's like, it is so unreal, because anyone should know all of the terrorists, I should know all of them, exactly what they look like. But the terrorists that I find, they drive around in BMWs. They have title like prime minister, like big bankers, like fancy this and that, and sir this and that.
Right.
So, and what I think is extremely important is when we come to a crime scene, just don't buy into the official story. Just, okay, that might be true, but put it aside, then go to the site, the location, look at the evidence, are there anything that doesn't match up? Are there any of the evidence showing in a different direction and so on? Because either we're looking at a world filled with crazy Muslim terrorists that want nothing more than blowing ourselves up for breakfast, or we're looking at possible inside jobs. And in that case, why would anyone do an inside job on your own population?
Right.
It's a massive difference, because we need to identify the enemy who is doing this to us. The rate of these false flags, I mean, there's so many of them. It's just accelerating to a point where it's ridiculous. It used to be once every 4th year or something like that. Then now it's like one a week at least.
Right. I wanted to mention, I saw something you put up online. It looks like there's been over 100 of these kind of events under Obama and about 20 under the past 3 or 4 different presidents. I mean, that right there has to tell you that something's going on.
Something is going on. Either he's really unlucky, or there's a design, a strategy behind it. And just because I say that, do not think that the presidents before him were innocent. Absolutely not to these type of things. This has been going on for a long time.
Of course. Yeah, man. So Paris is obviously the biggest one on the radar right now. I did want to have you on to talk about it. I wanted to let the dust settle a little bit, because, a lot of people come out the day of and say these are false flag attacks. And I don't think that really helps with getting people who might be more skeptical on board, because it seems like a rash judgment. So now that the dust is settled, maybe you can help walk us through the Paris attacks. There seems to be so much going on there. It's really hard to get the full story, which is actually part of the design of a modern false flag from what I understand. But tell us a little bit about the real story of Paris.
I'll be most happy to, but hold on to your hat, because this one is a bizarre one. Okay, so if I can please remind you, in the end of 2014, there was a whole series of false flag in Peshawar. There was one just outside Dublin at the Intel plant where it was blamed on ISIS. ISIS, by the way, total creation by the CIA, Mossad together. You can come here and chop off my right arm if they are what they seem to be. Then in the beginning of January, the so-called Charlie Hebdo event happened in Paris. And right after that, because I had been informed by sources on the inside that there was a series of attacks planned, I went out publicly 1 month before it happened in Copenhagen and warned about where it was going to happen. I told exactly it's going to be somewhere around this train station and so on, blah, 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 blah. Went out there, went up publicly on radio, warned about this. Nothing happened. I was relieved. Maybe I looked a bit like a fool. Did not matter as long as nobody got hurt. And then boom, 1 month later, on the hour, it happened in Copenhagen as well. Once again, a total false flag. I went there. I was there while the whole operation was being carried out. I took people on a guided tour being filmed on site with the police around us, everything, just totally debunking it. And also warning about the next step in their plan was Italy, somewhere in Florence, I believe, and that didn't happen either. Even though they went out and said, oh my God, ISIS is going to attack us here and so on. So I hope that by exposing their templates and how they work, that we can stop this madness. That's the whole point of doing these interviews. Mm-hmm. So here, the reason why I knew about these things happening was because I was sent info from the inside about these things. And then this fall, a similar thing came to me, but this time I thought that the main event was going to be Copenhagen again. And on the 11th of November, there was a major big drill, or there were two drills outside Copenhagen, one at the university in Copenhagen and one outside Denmark. The Copenhagen one at the university was a staged drill. The reason why drills are so important is that they are one of the main ingredients of a false flag. Mm-hmm. They're there so that we will relax. We won't react that there will be strange vehicles in town. We won't notice that they close off streets, that there will be people that we're not used to seeing, in the whole area. It will be all for our protection. So we won't even notice what's going on. But the drill is there so that they can get vehicles in positions. They can get all the material, explosives in position, lure the patsy in there so that he can get blamed and killed for it. All of it is hidden under this drill. And so many of these major events, if not all of them, have a drill. Like I think at 9/11, I believe there were 22 ongoing drills while it happened.
Wow.
At the 7/7 bombings, there was a massive one with the exact same scenario as what happened while it happened. So it was a drill going live, boom. And then you had many of the other ones also. The latest ones that I mentioned as well. A drill. So there was this drill in Copenhagen. One of them was this mass shooting where they used Swedish police as the terrorists. That's the first time ever. And we're looking at this globalization more and more. So very odd that Swedish police was over in Denmark playing the terrorist. And then there was this major drill with two ships that were going to collide, and they were saying that, we have this nuclear disaster on our hands. So I was totally focused on 11/11 because also with the numerology, everything fitted there. Mm-hmm. So I had people on site who went there because the way to stop them is to go there the day before, at least the day before, and start filming it while they set it up. Go there, bring your friends and family, everyone, and film it. Make it very, very obvious to the people that are setting it up that they're being observed, that they're being filmed, and so on, so that this might be a way of getting them to get cold feet and pull out.
Makes sense.
Because it's only by hiding in the dark that they can pull these things off. These people are extreme cowards, and they're doing this to innocent, normal people that cannot defend themselves. I mean, it is despicable, really awful.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so people were there in Denmark. They took photos, they filmed, nothing happened. So I thought, okay, I was wrong, big deal. At least I've done what I can. And then 2 days later, boom, it happened in Paris. So in January, it was first Paris and then Copenhagen. Now it was Copenhagen and Paris. Because I tell you, these things are extremely connected.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is through the networks of secret groups like the Bilderberg Group or organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, Skull and Bones, these secret brotherhoods where they're pulling the strings so that we do not see what's going on. But once you start seeing who are the members of, for instance, the Bilderberg Group, that makes you become aware of how it is possible that these leaders and bankers and politicians and so on, how they can work together so tightly, because we look upon them from a distance and say, oh, he's in France, he's in England, he's in Sweden, she's in Denmark, and don't get it. I mean, of course, they're not in the same group, but yeah, they are. So,
right.
So we look at Paris, Friday the 13th. And just as usual, they pick these dates. It's almost creepy. If it's not Veterans Day, Patriots Day, or it's Halloween, or it's the Valentine's Day, some kind of symbolic day. And Friday the 13th is actually, as far as some researchers claim, the reason why we fear that day is because there were a group of Knights Templar that were massacred in France, I believe in Paris, 1307 or something like that. And they swore that they're going to get back to us on the 13th, on the Friday the 13th, they will hit back. So that, without us knowing it, that is why we fear this day. And here we are at the exact location. So if it's okay with you, I could just go a quick run through of the official story, and then let's just have a look and see, does this match up? Is the evidence, the way they should?
Sure.
Because the truth is so fantastic. It's so clean, so beautiful. It doesn't need anyone to defend it or anything like that. It just is. If something happened, witnesses can give different variations, but the timeline will be the same. There will be no discrepancies, and it will match up. So if we check this one out, it should do that. But I beg to differ, and I tell you, I will show you some very weird stuff. Anyway, so on Friday the 13th, at around 9:20 p.m., there was a big football game it was a friendly game between France and Germany. These two countries have been very central in many of these operations. And the whole game was going on, and after a while, suddenly there was a bomb explosion heard outside the stadium. No one really reacted. It was just you could hear an explosion, nothing more. Then some 10 minutes later, boom, a second one went off. And then it is said that a third bomb went off as well, but that's said to have been like almost 35 minutes later, and only very few people report on that. So I totally doubt that the third one. Then 5 minutes later, there was a shooting at two different small restaurants, Le Carillon and Le Petit Camboche. And it is said that some cars pulled up and gunmen pulled out, started firing right into the crowd and killing 14. Then at 9:29, there was a shooting in the area of Avenue de la République, where 5 deaths are reported from Casa Nostra Pizzeria. Then at 9:38, there's a shooting at the La Belle Équipe bar, where it said that there were 19 deaths. And then there were in 9:43, there was an explosion at Comptoir Voltaire, where there was one person who died. And then 9:49 were the big event sort of this evening, where there was a music theater called Bataclan, and there were an American rock band in there called Eagles of Death Metal. There were about somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people there. It said that it was sold out. And 4 gunmen with suicide bombs went in there and started firing right into the crowd. They were shooting for some 10 to 15 minutes. And then afterwards they took some hostage. There were 80 people killed there. And then when the SWAT team entered around 10 p.m., there was it is said 1 to 3 suicide bombers blew themselves up, and the 4th one was killed. And then at 10 p.m., there was a shooting at Boulevard Beaumarchand, where 4 deaths were reported. So an absolute horrific evening in the history of Paris. I would say the worst since the Second World War.
Yeah, 7 attacks.
If what we're being told is true.
Right.
Because this is the whole point. And just like you say, it's so important not to scream false flag just because something happens. But then again, I must say that the last few years, it's very hard not to scream false flag because there have been so many of them.
I understand that too.
Okay, so let's start at the stadium. And this evening, the French President François Hollande, who was also very central in the Charlie Hebdo thing in January, he was there together with his German colleague. And they were sitting having a great time. Then it is said that there are 2 suicide bombers. And please notice that the facts around this case keep changing. The number of deaths, the number of attackers, the number of bombs, everything keeps changing. It's like trying to get hold of a floating watercolor painting, on water. It's just everywhere. And I think, just like you said before with false flag, this is part of the design so that you can't really grip on and hold on to anything here. When they carry out these false flags, one of the main things they do right before and during it happens is they cut out the network for cell phones, for telephone lines, for all of this, because they need to be absolute sure that they can control the information getting out, so that their information is out there. The official story is out there first and foremost. And for instance, when Kennedy was killed, the whole national phone system in the USA was shut down 1 solid hour from coast to coast, 1 solid hour. And it said that it was because everybody was calling each other saying, "Oh, have you heard what happened? And it just overloaded the system." Absolutely not true. Same with 9/11. Boom, everything shut down. They said that it was the phone masts that was on the top of the towers that went down. It was because of that. Absolutely not true. This is standard procedure. For instance, when MS Estonia, the ferry that was blown up and sunk with almost 1,000 people on it between Estonia and Sweden, when that was blown up through a false flag operation, a black operation, the whole radio signal, the whole radio system on the Balkan Sea, on all the coastal line, was shut down while the boat went down, while the ship went down. For these 30 minutes, when everything was going on, everything was blocked there. And so if we look at this one, was there any reports of something like that? And sure thing. Right after the game started, there were reports that cell phones was not working. And they say, thank God for that, because that helped stop any type of panic in there. But I would say this is a sign of a possible false flag here. Then also, it is said that there were 2 suicide bombers. They came. One of them, unfortunately, had forgotten to buy a ticket, so he was turned away by security. That was a bit of a bummer when you're on a suicide mission and you only had to remember the bomb and the ticket and whatever else, and forgot the ticket. Bit of a bummer.
Right.
So anyway, he was turned away, and it said that some reports say that security was frisking him and then felt the bomb, and he then turned away, ran, and blew himself up. The only problem we have here is that there are absolute zero footage of any explosion. There is no where the bomb went off, no blood. I tell you, I've been to war zones. If you've seen anyone being hit by a mortar grenade or being blown up like that, It is grisly. There will be pieces of this Mr. Suicide Bomber in the trees. You will find bones and blood and intestines and teeth everywhere. It is horrific. Here, zero. There's a wall with 2 drops of blood. And it's, to start with, it was said that the second suicide bomber, he got so frustrated when his friend blew himself up. So he waited some 10 minutes and then he blew himself up as well. But security didn't go there. They didn't try to interfere. All of the CCTV cameras this evening in Paris stopped working. At least the ones that was needed. There's no CCTV coverage at all. At all.
Convenient.
And this is in Paris, that was hit in January and has spent billions to amp up the whole system here. So anyway, so we look at these explosions. What could they have been? And I would suggest that nowadays, especially in the States, I don't know if you're aware of it, but on these big games, basketball, baseball, rugby, and so on, one of the things nowadays they do is that they add digital noise to the crowd noise. They add in cheering, they add in screaming, shouting, all of these things through the PA system. And so when you look at a game on TV, the sound that you get there, it can be more or less quiet at the stadium, but the thing that you hear also at the stadium, you will hear this crowd thing through the PA system. But I've even seen, you can find on YouTube where some teams are training, practicing with the noise on. So they're practicing in an empty stadium, but it sounds like it's packed.
Whoa.
So the PA systems nowadays are very powerful in these places. And I would very much suggest that I think that the explosions were only heard through the PA, nothing else. Anyway, so also this would be an amazing place if you want to carry out a terror event. You need impact. Emotional impact, that is what they're looking for. So a stadium with some 80,000 people, that would be the place to do it. But what they did was, 2 bombers are said to have blown themselves up outside here, 1 or 2, depending on who you want to trust. But what they did was they did not tell the people inside, which is in one way could be good, not to start a panic. At the same time, who says that there are not other attackers on the inside already?
Yeah.
So François Hollande, of course, he was there, and you have an almost identical scene where his advisor comes and whispers in his ears, telling him about what's going on. Exactly like George Bush Jr. when he was sitting listening to these kids reading a story about an old goat.
Yeah.
When he was informed about 9/11, the towers. He sits there, no emotion, no expression of fear, terror, nothing. He prefers to wait and listen to the goat story is done. Here, there are footage of the French Prime Minister being informed, the French President being informed, and he's totally calm. His German colleague even have a smile on his face when he leaves the stadium. But of course, all the bodyguards just jumped in and put, as a pile on top of him, protecting him with their body. Absolutely not. He was led out very calmly, and then he went out to the security booth, or up where they have, I think also where the reporters from the game are sitting, the commentators are sitting up there with a massive big glass arena, a panoramic window. He's up there making a phone call to someone in full visibility of the whole stadium. I mean, if there were some attackers at that stadium with a bazooka or grenade launcher or whatever, that would be the perfect place to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And still he's right there, and he's there at least 60 minutes after the bombs have gone off. So very calmly, he's just standing there as nothing happened, business as usual. So, anyway, also when you look at these operations, very often you will find that there are people know about it beforehand. There are some signs of that people have known about this thing before.
Right.
And how is that possible if this is not a planned operation? and so on. So we look at this case, and there's a Twitter account called FZ Books, and they tweeted 2 days before this actually happened. They tweeted the following message: breaking, death toll from Paris terror attacks rises to at least 120 with 270 others injured. But this Twitter account, when I found that, I just like, whoa, hang on a second, because I've seen that before. And when the Ebola outbreak were, on the move about a year ago, by the way, have you seen big piles of dead body everywhere? Absolutely
No.
not. It was a massive hoax once again, but another type of false flag operations. All of them there to scare the living bejesus out of us. And the same Twitter account sent out a tweet where it says, death toll in Ebola outbreak rises to at least 120 with 270 others injured. The exact same numbers, the exact same message. And also, when there was a school shooting in Peshawar in Pakistan, I think it was on the 14th of December 2014, there was exactly the same message being sent out from this Twitter account. Death toll from Peshawar school massacre rises to at least 120, with 270 others injured. And when you look into the Peshawar one, that is a massive false flag. And one of the victims is actually Noah Posner, 6 years old. You can see the footage of him, everyone. And for you who don't know who he is the living example of incarnation, because he was one of the children being killed at Sandy Hook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that happen more than one time where people seem to be at multiple false flag events.
This is it. And when you look at false flags, especially the staged events, because there are sometimes false flag operations carried out with real victims where people are getting killed. Then there are staged events where it's just like a film shoot, where it's all set to create terror through media that is pumping out through TV all of these horror stories, but nothing actually happened. Mm-hmm. Absolute zero people died. Like in Sandy Hook, for instance, zero people died. Boston bombing, 0 people died in the explosion itself. And so on many of these, I'm right in I'm being part of publishing a book called Nobody Died at Sandy Hook.
Right. That's actually been banned on Amazon, hasn't it?
It has indeed. And how is that possible in these modern times?
Exactly.
As far as I know, this is historical. It has not happened since, I think it was the Pentagon Papers around the Watergate scandal, that a thing like this happened.
It is very disturbing. I interviewed Jim Fetzer a while ago about his book, And I Suppose We Didn't Go to the Moon Either, which is a collection of various authors, but it was supposed to come out after the first book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook. And now that that's been banned on Amazon, I mean, even as controversial as it might be, that is a little scary to have some draconian organization that basically runs all of publishing around the world now banning books. I mean, what year is this?
But this is it. I did the layout for both of these books, also the cover design. And the third one that we're working on now is called And Nobody Died in Boston Either. It's just put the case out there step by step by step, show the evidence, and then it's up to each and everyone to make up their own mind. Mm-hmm. But it's like you can just, if you want to, go to the FBI's own website. You can go in there. It's right there in front of your eyes. You go to a number of homicides in Newtown, where Newtown is where Sandy Hook is underneath, and you will see the number is 0. It's just they are clumsy, they are sloppy, but there's also another level to the whole thing, and I believe that this case here shows another level where they put it right in our face, and I believe that it is. I've heard from people on the inside saying that people behind the New World Order, the way they interpret the law of karma is that if you inform your victim about what is going to happen and the victim does not react, then the karma is on them, not the attacker. Mm-hmm. And I spoke to Chip Tatum. He's a CIA whistleblower, and he was the commander of George Bush Sr.'s private hit team Pegasus. they carried out and took out at least 14 people during a few years there. But he's been around. He was one of the pilots in the Iran-Contras. He was a black helicopter pilot. He was a Night Stalker pilot, and so he's been really, he's the closest to a real James Bond, I would say, as they get,
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to him about this thing, and he said he never heard of it before, but he said that each time they were given the order to take someone out, they always had to go and confront them verbally first and give them, what he said, the chance to conform.
Really? That sounds dangerous.
He hated that because he said he was a soldier. It was like, if you want someone dead, just let me know. Tell me, I'll do it, But here, to go and confront them was very dangerous, both for him and his team and so on, because you never know what somebody's going to do. And then, but once they had the chance to conform, if they didn't do it, then a green light, take him out. And he said, now when you say this makes total sense, So
Yeah.
I think with this one and many other ones, they're putting it right in our face. I think with Noah Posner as well, it's so obvious once you see it, but if you don't, boom,
right,
the karma is on you. And here I would suggest that they are trying to up the operation. They're aiming globally now. They're really going for it.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you look at these events, the part that confuses me the most, or where I get kind of caught in the weeds, is if anyone died or if they didn't die. I've looked at Sandy Hook enough to be fully confident that no one died. The school was closed for a long time, and there's a connection there to Paris too. But when you're looking at the aftermath of these events, there are so many. How do you determine if anyone really died or if it was a complete media fabrication? Do you look into the idea of funerals or services for these kind of people?
Greg, I tell you, with so many deaths, this should be so easy to answer. And I am, like you, confused. In this case, I'm totally confused. I've been looking very deeply into the massacre in Norway, the mass shooting in Norway, and the blowing up of the government building in 2011 on the 22nd of July. And there is, on where the government building was blown up, on one side of the building, it's a very high building with open areas on both sides. On the side where the so-called bomb was, I believe there were real victims. And on the side where the bomb was not located, but there was still quite a lot of devastation, they were crisis actors. Mm-hmm. I totally believe that. And there was, nowadays you really need also to understand that media is in on this. It's not every single journalist, absolutely not, but the head of these different news corporations are part of it. Mm-hmm. The ownership and so on, by now it's totally hijacked. So, for instance, in Norway, you had, when there was some footage of some of the victims, some crisis actors, some real victims. Do you know, when there is a photo on the internet, if you click on the photo, you will always find that there's a search way to that photo. So a URL. You click on that and you will see up in the corner, or if you save it or whatever, you will see that there is a search way for it. And here, especially if it's one of these things that you can enlarge, then you will see exactly where it's located. And in Norway, on one side where there was real victims, the search way for some of them, there was the Norwegian TV station, TV2. It was something like tv2.no/victims/ and the name of the photo. Then on the other side of the building, it says tv2.no/actors/ and then the name of the photo. You know, so the folder where they had gathered the photos were one for actors, one for victims. Yeah. These things you're not supposed to see. It's only because I'm such a nerd when it comes to looking for things like this that I'm so on, you know, I'm trying to find every tiny little detail of these things. Mm-hmm. And here, on some of the photos from what happened in Paris, you have, especially on the one from CNN, it's something like idt.turner.com /CNN next /MAP, I think, or MAPA /assets / and then the name of the photo. And I mean, that is the CIA's word of people that are in their control.
Right.
So also, one of the things I ask you, where are all the footage from normal people? Where are all the videos from normal people? Where's all it's the official and nothing else.
Right. Especially in a concert, you'd think people would have their phones out.
Sure thing. But let's get back on track here. And
sure.
Also, another thing that showed that somebody knew before was that after this happened, there were all these buildings around the world that was lit up, with the French colors.
Mm-hmm.
You had in Sydney, you had please be aware of the same countries that keep repeating, where these big terror acts are. And then when they're once again part of these things. And it was in Sydney, it was in Canada, it was in Sweden, it was in the UK and so on. And in the UK, it was the Wembley Stadium. But that Wembley was lit up 1 hour before it actually happened.
Weird.
Not weird. Somebody messed up. And if you look at it, there's a timeline. There's a difference between the time zones of 1 hour between London and Paris. So I think somebody screwed up here, and somebody has got their ass kicked, afterwards.
Right.
But people saw it lit up beforehand. That was even before it happened. So they were like, "What the hell happened?" And then it was shut down again. Also, Wikipedia, which of course is something you can totally trust, not. At 23:06 p.m., Wikipedia had an article up with extreme details. With all of it was there, a complete outline of the events and the number of wounded and dead and so on. I was like, whoa, how could they know this? And then also we managed to backtrack a version that was uploaded 23:06, where it says that President François Hollande, he declared a state of emergency and closing the borders for the whole of France and so on. Only one slight little problem was that he didn't give that speech until 23:58 actually. I mean, that is like 52 minutes after it's up on Wikipedia is when it actually happens. And this is, if you've seen the JFK film, do you know Mr. X? His name was Fletcher Prouty, his real name. He's the guy that explains everything to Garrison, Kevin Costner, the character. Mm-hmm. And he said that he used to work at the Pentagon very high up. And just before the JFK assassination, he was sent to the South Pole with some businessmen for no apparent reason. But the thing was, he was a very decent, very honest man. And I believe they wanted him out of the way so he wouldn't mess anything up. So he was on his way back, and he was on New Zealand, in Christchurch, when he opened the newspaper and read about the assassination, with a whole complete bio of Lee Harvey Oswald, the whole background, photos, everything. And this was before Oswald was even arrested.
Wow.
You see, and it's like he said, at that moment, I knew it was Black Op. I knew we were the one who had done it. And this is the way you can see it. These are clear signs of a black operation.
Wow.
Okay, so let's see if there is any of these so-called bad guys that could be involved. And just a few weeks before this happened, at the George Washington Center for Cyber and Homeland Security, I think it was on the 27th or 29th of October, there was a panel called the Shared 21st Century International Mission. Please listen to that again. The Shared 21st Century International Mission. And the people in the panel were CIA Director John O'Brien, former UK MI6 Chief John Sawyers, Director of the French Directorate for External Security Bernard Bachelet, and former Israeli National Security Jacob Amidror. I mean, my God, is that a team or what?
Yeah.
And also, it was co-hosted by the CIA. Very nice indeed. So, I would say, yes, there are some sure signs that people knew beforehand. And also, I would very much like to suggest that if someone can look into what happened at the French stock market, you will see that very often they carry out these operations on a Friday afternoon. This was Friday evening. And the reason for that is, one of the main reasons, is that then, due to the respect of the mourning families and so on, they close down the stock market, and they close it down for 2-3 days. 3 days is the optimal for them, because that is where they can do all of these transactions that they have been building up to, insider trading, and then hide their tracks as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And here we have right away, what did Francois Hollande, the president, say? We will take 3 days of mourning. Yeah. So here, that was the exact boom, fitted in. I would very much like anyone, an expert in these areas, please look into what was going on, because I tell you, there was some serious insider trading going on. Mm-hmm. Because the thing is that people think this is a tragedy, not if you know what's going to happen. When JFK was killed, it was a very, very, if not the all-time high on the stock market in the US. And when the Swedish Prime Minister Ole Palme was killed, it's exactly the same thing. People make billions, billions when these things happen. Okay, so drills. Were there a drill? Yes, there was. Thank you very much. Exactly the same scenario as what actually happened. And there was especially one man, his name is Patrick Pelot, and he was interviewed on a radio station, and he said, as luck would have it, in the morning of this, the Paris SAMU, which is the EMT, had a multi-site exercise planned. And he said it was so lucky because there were all of these vehicles was in positions and so on. So that made it possible for them to save a lot of these people, which is great. But also, the thing is, since I've been looking into so many of these, I always check out the key people in key positions to see, oops, are you someone I know from before or not? And this Patrick Pelot, he stood out like a sore thumb, because in 2011, he was one of the people outside the Charlie Hebdo building when it was turned on fire. That was 2011. Then in January this year, 2015, when Charlie Hebdo happened, he was in a meeting with first responders, fire brigade and ambulances. They were in this meeting, and he was called up by one of his friends who worked at the Charlie Hebdo office. And because he also had been working, writing articles for Charlie Hebdo and so on. And the phone call, his friend says, please, we're being shot at, come and help us. So he was very close by, so he ran over to the office. He was one of the absolute first people there. He went in there, he did what he could to save all these, the lives of his friends. And then he picked up his cell phone and called President Francois Hollande. I mean, as you do,
Sure, we all have the president's number.
Well, I have Obama on quick dial or whatever you call it. So anyway, so then afterwards, he was one of the people sitting crying on TV, telling all the horror stories and so on. So I checked him out because he looked pretty not convincing, not very good, but he was still crying. And I've really, no disrespect, if this had been a real thing, I would not talk like this, but this is so crappy the way it's executed, so I need to talk like this. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he was in a film called The Nurse from 2009. He was playing the nurse in a 2009 film called Incognito, and he was also a doctor in the film called Bad Girl from 2012. So he's got the skills of acting, and afterwards he was hugged by Francois Hollande. He's standing there among the victims at the funerals, and he has like a white bandana on, and he's being hugged, and these photos are being spread everywhere. And this day with the drills, he was the one being interviewed, and he's also one of the reporters from some of the TV stations, reporting all of these things out. And there's also other people afterwards, people that were in charge of this drill, and they're sitting there on French TV, saying it right out there. Yes, we had a drill. It was the exact same theme. It was very lucky because that made it possible for us to come and rescue people. This is exactly what happened at 7/7. There was an exact drill of the exact thing that happened. So it went from, I think it's called slow thinking to fast acting. You know, where the drill went live, there was a person called Peter Power. He was in charge of the whole operation. It involved more than 1,000 people. And he was sitting laughing and said, yeah, it was kind of a creepy situation, you know, this type of thing. But it's right there in your face. Also, I heard from a local woman in Paris. She said she lives in the exact area where this thing happened. And she said that on this Friday morning or this Friday afternoon, when her son came home from school, he had a letter from the school advising parents on what to do in case of an emergency. And she said that this has never happened before. So anyway, the paper said it was an advice for parents. They said, in case of an emergency, do not call or come to the school. Stay away from the area, whatever the area, and listen for updates from a radio station called French Blue. So when you look at many of these areas around where the shooting was and so on, if you look at the photos in the background, even though it's in the middle of the night, there's no lights in the house around them. And most of these houses are old French houses, you know, like 6, 8, 10 stories high with apartments, but there are no lights. So I would very much put a question out there. Were people evacuated beforehand? That is what happened in Copenhagen around the synagogue shooting, which was an absolute false flag, where I spoke to people. They were not allowed to be there for 3 days before and after this event. You know?
Wow. Man, let me ask you about another element that seems to pop up in some of these things. Like when 9/11 happened, there's a lot of researchers who found that this guy, Larry Silverstein, who owned the buildings, had a big insurance policy on them, and he made a lot of money actually during 9/11.
Yeah.
Do we get any indication from the owners of any of these buildings, like the theater or the restaurants, that could show that, you know, they're connected to the type of people who might be in on these kind of things?
Yeah, very much so. A very good observation, by the way. Here we don't have a destroyed building because often the building that gets blown up or are destroyed have some kind of problem with asbestos or with problems with too few tenants or a crack in the foundation, something like that. So that when a thing like this happens, the people involved get a bundle. But here nothing is destroyed like that. But the Bataclan, the music theater, I want to say first, I believe that there are 2 of the restaurants. I'm not totally sure, but it seems like La Carillon and possibly Le Petit Cambodge were closed down for a few months before this happened.
Whoa.
Meaning that anyone in this operation could have gotten access to them. I've tried to get this confirmed. Some people say yes, some people say no. So I'm a little confused there.
I did want to say, I saw a picture that you put up where it shows, looks like locks on the door. And there's a chalkboard outside a restaurant, which is typical. And the chalkboard hasn't been changed in months. And we also saw in Sandy Hook, the school was closed. So that also jives. That's a connection.
It is. The thing is, to be able to pull things like this off, you need to be in control of all parameters, you know, including the buildings, including the actors, including the victims, including their families, and so on. You need to be able to control it all. So the buildings are very essential. One of the restaurants where the owner's wife is said to have been killed was purchased, I think, 1 month before this happened by a Jewish guy. And the Bataclan Theater was sold on 9/11, September 11, 2015, by the Jewish brothers Joel and Pascal Lalou, who then moved straight to Israel. And the buyer was an investment firm called Le Garderet, whose largest partner is Qatar Holding. That is a sovereign wealth fund. But this company has been known, at least there's a lot of rumors. I have been informed that they have been part of financing these type of terror events. I do not know for sure. But I was on a program a while ago together with the former U.S. Army Special Operations Officer from the 11th Psychological Operation Battalion, Civil Affairs Psychological Operations Command, and a Global Psychological Warfare Counterterrorism Analyst. My God, Scott Bennett.
What a resume.
Yeah, he is like way in there and a very heavy army type of guy. But he became a whistleblower. He went to jail for 2 years, but we were on the same program. And his job in the military was to track down funding of so-called terror attacks. And I asked him specifically about this company, and he said his hands are tied, but he said, you're right on track.
So crazy. There's so many different layers, and Paris is definitely one of the most deep and dense ones there is, and there's so many details, 7 different events in one day. But before we run out of time, I wanted to talk about San Bernardino a little bit. That also happened not long after the Paris events, and it's also very weird. One of the guys talking on the news had a Freemason's hat. They also opened the apartment of the supposed terrorist. They opened the apartment to reporters. You would think that would be a crime scene, but they just let reporters in there. And the other very weird thing is there's a photo of guys, mercenaries they're being called, from a company called Kraft International, present at the San Bernardino shooting. They also popped up at the Boston bombing. So that's another weird connection. But what are your thoughts on the San Bernardino attack, if it was a false flag as well?
It's very hard for me to even focus on it. It is so badly carried out. And it's come to a point, once again, I'm sort of like, why are they pointing it out so obviously to us? And I think we're back to the karma thing. I also think it's for them to throw a net out there and see what people are capable of logical thinking, who can connect the dots, who will spot these things. Because then, I mean, they cover, I don't want to freak people out, but they have big check when it comes to Facebook and these other things, and they see who posts, who likes who, and so on. And I think this might be a way of throwing it out there so obvious to see anyone who don't see that is totally brain dead. So we don't have to worry about him or her.
They know who to round up first.
This is my interpretation. I don't get it otherwise, because it's just too, I mean, it's at least, can you just use the same car? It's not the same car being chased as at the shooting. There's all of these other things. It's just like, it's so hard for me to even get into it, because I also feel, Chip said, very often when they carry these operations out, they have staff meetings. This is business as usual for them. Mm-hmm. They have staff meetings. Okay, what is it we're trying to accomplish? What is the effect we want? How are we going to carry it out? They've got timelines, sketchboards, storyboards, all of these things. Okay, so the operation goes down, and then they have people there while it happens, but also follow-up meetings right after, saying, did we get the required effect? Do we need to amplify it, and so on? And very often they carry out a second one. If it didn't pull off enough weight, the one we did, then we'll just do another one, more or less exactly identical, but in another country. Like the Woolwich beheading, if you remember that, when they said to have chopped the head of an English soldier. Oh, it's my absolute favorite, so bad. And then right after that, there was a similar event in Paris, or at least they said there was, right the day after, where identical situation. Here, more or less, I mean, I would very much suggest that it's possible that they flew the shooters from Paris and on the next plane. Sorry about the jet lag, but you need to perform just another one here. Okay, fine. San Bernardino here. And please realize, why are they always in black military type looking clothes? Have you noticed these so-called terrorists? They're always dressed in black or dark clothes. The thing is, because that is what the SWAT teams are as well, and the police.
Right.
So the only thing the shooter goes in there, fires his weapon, when the police arrives, he just bends down, put on his balaclava, because nowadays the police looks like the terrorist, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
Put on his balaclava and goes out with the old guy. Nobody noticed. 14 people in, 15 people out.
Yeah.
It's a classic one.
And it's another case where people said there were witnesses talking to reporters that were like, I thought it was a drill because they've been doing these kind of drills all week, and it just seemed like it was another one of those. And it's like, wow, right there, another connection. And people said they saw 3 white males in military garb. I think it might be these Kraft International people they're talking about. But then you find out the patsies, I guess we could say, is this couple, and they've been radicalized. You talked about those terms that people keep throwing out. Radicalized is one of them. It's like they can just turn anybody on. Like everybody you might know could have a light switch, and they just might get flipped, and they'll be radicalized, and you never know who's going to be the next terrorist. It's definitely a mind game.
I think they weaponized Islam. The word Islam, they weaponized it so that if we hear Islam, your mind would think terrorism. If you hear Muslim, oh my God, terrorist.
Right.
And this guy, Salah Abdel Salam. Okay, if you hear that word, I am not sure if this is a real person. If you hear his name, I've always said in interviews, they call him Karim, Karim, Karum, Karam, Kara. Something, 3 words, they need 3 names. Yeah. For some reason, they use that always on plane killers, Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, and so on, but also serial killers that they use. They use these 3 names as standard.
John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, there you go. And Lee Harvey Oswald, he hated Harvey. He never used it, for instance. But anyway, here, his word, Salah Abdel Salam. If you listen to that word, it's almost Allah Abdul Islam. So they taken Allah, Abdul, and Islam and put into one name. Mm-hmm. So your subconscious here, oh my God, that must be a real terrorist. I don't know if you've seen, but I found one photo, 2 of the so-called terrorists. They're in the same photo as where they're carrying away one of the so-called victims. They're standing there. He's standing with his motorbike helmet, just looking there. It's the only 2 people in the background. They're just standing looking there. Wow. And then you got a really weird one. Here, back to, please understand that media nowadays are connected. Sky News, they have a story, I think the day afterwards. They're on location in Paris, and they're doing the whole story, and they're filming different spots in Paris. And they're standing, the guy says, well, and who knows how many more of them are hiding out there. That's the way he ends, the voiceover ends. And exactly when he says these words, they're filming a pedestrian crossing towards a cafe called Attitude. And right in from the left, looking into the camera, is Salah Abdel Salam. And he walks right in front of the camera, looks into the camera and smirks, and then leaves. And when you go down Google Map, he has to walk straight in the middle of the street to come from that angle, right in front of the camera, smirking he's looking straight into the camera. And so I checked out the Attitude Cafe. Where is that? And that is exactly in the middle of, it's just a few hundred meters from Bataclan and some of the other restaurants where they were shooting. And also very, very close to the Charlie Hebdo offices. So it's all right in the middle of the same. And then you say, but how is that possible? I would say this guy is totally set up. He's totally framed, has nothing to do with it. Maybe they did this filming days before or weeks before. Maybe he thought it was part of a commercial or just a joke or whatever, Mm-hmm. So the whole thing, the whole chase and all of these things, absolutely crap. Don't even look at it. Like the female suicide bomber. Oh yeah, oh here she is, oh she died, she blew herself up. Very sorry, she's alive and she's in Morocco. I've got an interview with her there. Oh, but all the victims, there were some victims from Spain. 2 of them are alive. Even the vice president of Spain went to, I think it was the vice president, he went to one of the families saying, we're so sorry, your son was killed in Paris. Not. What is going on here?
Yeah.
It's the same with the 19 hijackers, where at least 10, I think 9 or 10 of them were still alive after the event.
That's true. I remember that.
Why do they do it like this? If they steal an identity, at least kill the guy, bury him, so that you don't have a problem. I mean, that is Farmer Brown logic, I would say.
Yeah.
But here, it is like, also in San Bernardino, there were several reporters talking about it. The actors, the deceased actor, the name actor was mentioned at least 3 times.
Oh, really? I did not hear that.
You did not hear that. Listen again to these official ones. They keep referring to them as actors. And I put a photo on Facebook. It's of this couple, beautiful photo of the couple. And then I said, this is a photo of the 3 white males identified as shooters. The witnesses see 3 white shooters, and this is what we're being pumped with.
Mm-hmm.
If there was anyone dead, I mean, maybe these people were really dead in the car. In that case, executed.
Right.
Totally killed.
And then, of course, all the news stories here in the States since Paris and San Bernardino have been all about which states are going to take refugees and which states aren't. And it's it's a lot of drama and a lot of fear. And it also creates division. You know, the divide and conquer meme is in full swing here when people are deciding in very emotional ways, arguing if refugees should or shouldn't be taken, when really they're just citizens that don't really have much of a say anyway. But the reverberations of such an event, I mean, they're hard to calculate.
If you don't want refugees, stop bombing them.
Right.
It is very simple. Stop bombing them. You are blowing the living bejesus. You're killing, slaughtering people. Unfortunately, my country is part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
They are totally innocent to this whole thing. If you want it to stop your politicians, you know.
Right. And they're human too, but their deaths don't make it on the airwaves, and nobody colors a memorial in the color of the Syrian flag.
But these are real deaths.
Right.
Why are there no Palestinian flags? And by the way, how soon came that thing up on Facebook? I mean, it was within, I think, half an hour or so on Facebook. You could add the Paris flag behind it.
Mm-hmm. Looked like a big Pepsi ad.
Yeah, we got product placement here again. I mean, big time. I don't know if we get through that in other ones. I mean, they do not miss an opportunity to make a buck.
Man, I'm also kind of curious. Let me ask you, this is somewhat unrelated, but, you know, I think it's all connected to some degree. But being closer to the agenda there in Europe, what do you think of this Angela Merkel as Times Person of the Year? What are they trying to say with this, in your opinion?
It was not only Person of the Year, it was the Chancellor of the free world.
Big statement.
What does that mean? Who is she? I mean, who is she? It's not that she's made sort of like a great impression on the world as being a fantastic person. And this very evening, when this happened in Paris, she was supposed to have been to a football game in Hanover, where they, thank God, they just managed to find out that somebody had planned to fill an ambulance full with explosives and drive it into the stadium. How big are the chances?
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, totally in on it. Also, you see she's doing Freemasonry symbols all the time when she's standing with her hand. It's constant. I say the whole idea is to, I would say, get Obama in on a 3rd term, even though it breaks Constitution totally, followed by Hillary, horror, and with Merkel here in Europe. But these are not the key people. They are not the people who run the show. They are just the ones that we see. You know, so we're talking about the New World Order big time. This is the time where they're really pushing for it. But now I've been very dramatic and dark for a while here. I think that this is wonderful because it's like, is this the best you can do? I mean, really, you have tried everything and we are still standing. You have tried swine flu, Ebola, all of these mass hoaxes, all of these false flags, all of these, and we're still standing. You have still not managed to get us here. You really tried in 2012 did not work. We're still standing. You really aimed at September this year to get the whole financial situation crashed, the whole everything with Jade Helm 15. I mean, really get us into the corner where we could not slip out anymore. And then global martial law didn't work either. I think they are totally desperate now. And even though if you look at it with a logic mind, it's like we're screwed. We might as well lie down and die. But if you ask my heart, I tell you, I think they're going down. I think the dragon is already slain. And what we see here is like pathetic attempts to try and control us. Prove me wrong. And the day I'm wrong, fine. But then at least I tried everything I could. And if I was here just to spread fear, I was doing their job. They want us to be fearful. Mm-hmm. You know, that is their game to keep us totally in panic. So I say, if that is how they control us, if that is what they want, turn it around. They want divide and conquer. I say, love and embrace. They want us to be fearful. I said, let's be fearless. You know, They want us to control us with lies. I say, truth will conquer. Transparency, way to go. They want us to hate our neighbors of a Muslim faith, or because they have a different skin color or whatever. Let's go the other way around.
Yes.
And also see it that they're blaming these people. The whole thing with ISIS and these refugee things, I've known about it for like 5-6 years that they were planning these mass. You can read books by Snibrinsky or David Rockefeller. It's out. It's right there. This multicultural thing. It's their plan. And the way I see it, I don't care if you're brown, yellow, green, white, blue, upside down, is, you know, Hindu, Sikh, Christian, whatever. If you're a decent person and you treat people around you with respect and love, you're my guy.
Amen.
But here they're trying to do something totally different. Once again, they want us to fear each other, especially each other. And they're going to do some lame-ass things now. They've tried everything. So I bet you the next thing is going to be the suicide grandma in a wheelchair. Did you see they even got the wheelchairs in San Bernardino? I've been waiting for that. When are they going to bring in, you know, the wheelchair was loaded with explosives? When are they going to bring it in? They did it there indirectly. So what have they not tried? What have they not tried? You know, the underwear bomber, tried that one. It's like they're running out of options.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They tried the Muslim thing for so long. Then they went to the geek thing in Sandy Hook and Aurora. These things did not work really, even though everybody had the same haircut more or less with a, don't know what you call that, strange fringe.
Right.
All of these photos are totally photoshopped. These are people that did not exist to start with. Then they went to the Scandinavian looking Anders Breivik in Norway, all these things so that we will start fearing anyone. You know, and now it can be just anyone, maybe your grandmother.
As soon as she gets radicalized.
I tell you, if she goes once to one of these meetings, it's always once they go and boom, suddenly they just totally change their whole personality and then they just want to blow us all up.
Yeah.
It's very powerful, these meetings. I don't know what they do there.
It doesn't seem like we need to be that afraid. So, all right, man, I know we got to get out of here. I did want to ask you, because you have predicted these things in the future, you have predicted these things in the past. Do you have any thoughts on where people should be focusing their attention in the near future?
On themselves, on how they react, on how they buy into news, on how they buy into their reaction, how they look upon their neighbor, how they look upon somebody whose name is Abdullah. Or if you work at an airport, how you treat people, you know, these poor people that are their only problem is that they come from a different country with a different religion and they're being treated like absolute dirt and a terror threat and so on. All of us need to look ourselves in the mirror and see, how do we play along in this? And then, you know, in this product placement, there's one company I mentioned here that has this slogan, just do it. I say, just don't. Just don't. Don't buy into it and stop spreading fear. Look into these things. These are very dark stuff. Some of us cannot handle it. If you can't handle it yourself, leave it to people like myself, but be very aware of what you're spreading around yourself. Don't spread fear and these horrific rumors and so on if you're not 100% sure that they're true.
Right.
I think this is the final battle. I really think so. I've said 2015 is the year it's going to happen, and we're running out of time now for 2015. But I think this time I've never seen them go full speed ahead in such a bizarre way. And I could go on for another 2 hours about this case. It's so bizarre. And I just think, if you go to many official websites where you see comments about these things, or on the official websites, the comments are full of, this is a false flag, this is a hoax, this, don't believe it, in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And I tell you, before Boston bombing, I was the only one that I heard use the word false flag almost, me and a few others. But false flag was something that was totally unknown. And now it's mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And they have only very few methods. It's problem, reaction, solution. They secretly create the problem to get the reaction from us. Oh my God, protect me. Emotional reaction. And then they would come with a solution. That is one they use. Divide and conquer is another one. And they don't have that many more. So
yeah,
and fear is the tool. So as soon as we identify these methods and see what's going on, and then the next time there is I don't know how many of these, swine flu, Ebola. The next time there's this upside down, blown up green monkey flu or whatever they want to call it, just don't buy it.
Right.
Stop pumping your innocent children full of these awful, awful vaccines that are also part of the plan.
Yeah.
Horrific stuff. And the next time there's a San Bernardino thing, turn off the box, turn it. There's this amazing button on the remote. It says off.
Yeah.
Off. Because if you knew that there was a sadistic serial killer in your neighborhood that was wanting to get to you or to your children, and you found out that TV was the way that he was manipulating you, would you keep it on?
Right.
Would you have it on? I would say, because these guys use manipulation in a way that we've never been up against a propaganda machine the size of this. Never, ever. So one way to stop letting them persuade your subconscious is turn it off. Turn it off. Look around you. See, my God, I've got a wife. I've got kids. I wonder how they're doing. I haven't spoken to them for a couple of years. Play games, go out in the forest, go out in nature, go out, see who you can help, look for options to help, There's so many people out there that needs help. Do some, that will make you feel great. The people you help, especially if you do it selflessly without expecting anything, then the person receiving will feel helped and lifted as well. And people who see these, especially random acts of kindness, it lifts them as well.
Well said.
Let's lift each other, go down the highway, pay for the car that comes after you without knowing who it is. I tell you, that person might be very depressed and maybe wanted to contemplate suicide. And then just by someone who paid him, somebody who out there who cared enough to do a thing like that can save lives.
Yeah.
Or pay for the coffee in a coffee shop. Just when you leave, just say to the waitress, the woman out in the corner there, don't say it's for me, and just pay her bill. These type of things, small things, that can make an incredible impact.
Mm-hmm. Well said, man. Yeah. And, man, this has been awesome. Great breakdown again. Really, I appreciate what you do. Of course, lightonconspiracies.com is the website. Follow everything he's doing there. Anything else you'd like to leave the people with before we really wrap it up?
I'm going now to Amsterdam to do an open mic conference this weekend. The last time I was there with Christopher Bollin, an expert on 9/11, Ken O'Keefe, Ian Crane, Frank Rasmussen from Denmark. And when we came there, none of us was going to talk about the Holocaust. And then in the media there was this whole slander campaign about us being Holocaust deniers and Jew haters and so on. The thing is, as far as I know, I don't really know a Jew personally, so it's not that easy for me to hate them. But we were called Jew haters, all of these things, and well, I turned it around because I just went out publicly to about 50 radio stations around the globe saying, please, this is what's going on. Keep your eyes on this one. And it just totally backfired in their face. Police were there. They stopped the venue that we were going to have the conference at. But in the end, after, the police came there afraid of us being the enemy. But these are good guys, So after a few minutes, suddenly it came to a point where they said, do you know any type of help you need? Here's my personal cell phone, I'll just give me a call. This is the thing, the magic with love, where they come from fear and hate. If you meet it with love and fearlessness, it is magical, I tell you. Anyway, so now I'm going back there. I was threatened to be arrested in Berlin. I went there, nothing happened. I was threatened to be arrested in Norway. I went back there, nothing happened. And here, I'm going back here now to Amsterdam the day after tomorrow. So let's see what happens. Hopefully nothing. But should anything happen, then you know that why it happened was because what I said was true. Yeah. And if so, then please know and understand that it affects your life in ways that you can't even imagine. So if I'm put away somewhere, that's one thing, but please take care of your family, friends, children, everyone by waking up. Once we transcended this new world order, then you can go back to sleep again. No problem. But here and now, very good to wake up.
Right.
This is the time. It's accelerating at an incredible speed.
It is. Oh, man. Well, hey, Ole, take care of yourself out there and definitely stay safe and be careful.
I will. But the way I see it, what is my main focus is fearlessness and stay in love. That whatever happens, if I can stay in love, then I'm very pleased with that. Is it okay with you if I end with a prayer?
Absolutely. Sure. Let's do it.
I'm not a religious person.
Me either.
But I love this one.
Cool.
It goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Victory to that light. Because the thing is, they need to heal as well. If they don't heal, this madness will just continue. So we all need to heal, And then on the other side, let's have a massive party.
Amen, man. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. Have a great time in Amsterdam. And we'll obviously talk again the next time this agenda pops up its ugly head.
Yeah. And anyone who wants to support me or be part of this truce, whatever you want to call it, I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm not paid by this is not my job. I'm just totally devoting myself to do this. On my website, Light on Conspiracies, there are books, donation buttons, sign up for my newsletter, these type of things. This is what helps me going, because what I try to do is get out and be on location as well, so that I can hopefully be part of stopping these things.
Right.
I humbly believe that I've been part of stopping at least 2 Volkswagen massacres. So if you want to join, please.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely do. Well, I love it. And take care. And thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon.
Boom, people. Ole Dammegard. Always a pleasure. Just a nice guy looking for that elusive truth. I get that. And I hope you feel like we made a pretty good case. And whether you think people died or not, it seems pretty clear that there are some indications of premeditation from our so-called leaders, and plenty of other reasons to be skeptical, especially the recent changes in ownership with businesses involved, and the drills, always with the drills. I mean, when we look at history and see things like the MK Ultra era and several known false flags, do we think that these things just go away on their own without anybody ever being held accountable? I really doubt it. I think they get more refined, more effective, and more secretive. It's also funny how they never attack the elite. We get bombings at restaurants and death metal shows and public transportation and soccer games, but never government meetings or elite hangouts. Or Israel, really. just more food for thought, but I hope we all feel a little more informed. If you want to hear another hour with Ole, please sign up at thehighersidechatsplus.com. It's all I want for Christmas, guys. But that said, I have what I think is a pretty great last show of the year and a very interesting look at the new chronology movement to kick off 2016. I'm probably going to have to put off the Armenia video until the new year. It was not a wise decision to try to put in something that takes way more work than a typical show into the busiest month of the year. So I apologize for that, but you got to enjoy these precious moments off the hamster wheel, people, and I'll talk to you soon. But for now, I've done my part. Your move, caravan of crisis actors on the Global Terror Tour. Your frickin' move.
No one knows what it's like